Hello, my name is Simon Double, and welcome to Inside the Rails, a monthly podcast for horse racing enthusiasts everywhere. And as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, Phil Boyle from BG Racing. Hi, Phil. How are you? And how are you coping with these autumnal times?
Hi, Simon. Yes, I'm fine, thanks. It's great to be back behind the mic. Although, yes, the weather is playing havoc with my schedule at the moment. I was supposed to be racing this afternoon, but I've been busy cancelling that this morning as the meeting's abandoned. But I guess it wouldn't be the jump season without a bit of cold and wet. And we're recording this 2 days before Cheltenham's first meeting of the season. So I'm hoping that goes ahead because I'm quite excited about my visit that is planned to there. Now, we had no guests last month, but I'm sure listeners will be delighted that they don't have to listen to us for another half an hour with no interruptions. I think you've got somebody lined up to join us.
Lovely to have a guest back on. We do indeed have Jack Quinlan, young, upcoming, but already successful professional jumps jockey.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that. Now then, you sent me a surprising photograph last week, and I've just realised that sounds a lot dodgier than I intended it to be. The picture was of you at Kempton, and they weren't even racing on the all-weather. It was a jumps meeting. So can I take it that I've finally tempted you over to the dark side? Well, the dark, the cold, the wet side of National Hunt Racing, or was that a one-off?
Just to reassure listeners, that photo was indeed not at all dodgy, but it was a rare selfie, and an even rarer selfie of me at a jumps meeting. Yes, I was indeed at Kempton, as Mercian Prince was making his hurdling debut for Amy Murphy and owners Eclipse Sports Promotions, run by my very good friend Steve Surridge, who in fact introduced me to Amy Murphy about 4 years ago now. Steve couldn't go, so I was acting as his racing manager, met up with two of his owners who were there. The horse didn't really take to hurdling, and after losing his way on the flat recently as well, he was putting the horses in training sale at Tattersalls this week. And something else I don't normally attend is a golf event. It was a charity event to raise money for Gadsden Place Riding for the Disabled, which listeners may know I'm a trustee of. And I was delighted not only to be auctioneer for the afternoon, but to have you and your lovely wife, Sarah, as one half of the 19 four-ball teams. I think you both played okay, didn't you?
Yes, we did. It was a fun couple of days. We were joined by a couple of my shareholders to make up our team. And my wife, Sarah, really enjoyed having two gentlemen to take her out for her birthday dinner the night before the golf. Well, one gentleman and me. And yeah, despite eating so much at that meal that I couldn't even face a bacon roll before golf the next morning, we did have a really enjoyable day on the golf course, and I'm sure we'll be up for a return visit if we're invited next year.
Yes, I probably should have warned you about the size of the nachos at the Gatsby restaurant. It was pretty huge, wasn't it? Look, thank you both for taking part and helping to raise, I don't think I've mentioned this to you, we've raised some £8,500 from the event, which, bear in mind, you're only looking at, 76 people there, was amazing. So it's a very worthwhile charity. So thank you, and Sarah and everybody who took part. Now, away from clubs, caddies and bunkers to what we're really here to talk about, and that's racing. So, on the horse front, the Solario Racing horse front, Tarantino is now much better behaved, thanks to Gary the Goat, but ironically, he seems to have lost his mojo on the racecourse. Perhaps he's getting too well behaved, who knows? So, he gets sold at Tattersalls this week, and 6-year-old Dancing in the Woods is also on his way. So, knowing Solario Racing will be down to two horses next year, I went to Tattersalls October yearling sales in search of two yearlings.
Wow. And in the current climate, when people are struggling, I noticed that the bloodstock prices at the yearling sales seem to be largely unaffected. So can I assume you're considerably poorer, having bought a couple of yearlings?
You are considerably right there. Yes, I am indeed a little bit lighter in the pocket, to the tune of just under 50,000. But the good side is that the plus side is that I bought two cracking colts, a lovely chestnut by 2018 Derby winner Massar, and a bay colt by Group 1 Sussex Stakes winner and first season sire Mahatha. You may remember Mahatha, Phil, trained by Marcus Tregoning, lovely horse. The Massar was 25,000 guineas and the Mahatha was 22,000. They're both well put together, good moving colts. I've done 2 photo shoots with them already, and they're due to have a saddle on this week and be ridden for the first time certainly by Saturday, when I hope to do the third photo shoot.
Sounds good. The big question, though, is we've recently had Jimmy George from Tattersalls on the podcast, so I'm hoping he did you a deal on one of those purchases, and if so, is there a voucher code that ensures Inside the Rails hosts get commission-free purchasing at Tattersalls now?
Sadly not. Have you ever known an auction house do a deal for anybody? No. In terms of Jimmy George, in fact, I was so busy looking at horses. You know how time runs away with you, doesn't it, at the sale? So I didn't get time to meet Jimmy, but maybe another time. I am currently in the throes of putting my marketing material together, having spent the best part of £50,000. So for listeners' information, the Massar will be in quarter shares and the Mahatha in 12th shares. More details to follow. Solario Racing advert over. What's BG Racing been up to in October?
Yeah, we had another race from Dynamic Kate. She finished fourth at Stratford. She was a little bit unlucky, really. She got shuffled back in a bit of scrimmaging on the home turn. It was a bit more akin to some of the stuff we've seen in the Rugby World Cup than a race at Stratford. Yeah, she got shuffled right back to the back of the pack, and she then ran on really well to be fourth, but the front three had really gone by then. They'd flown off in front, and she was never going to catch them. She also came back with a pretty bad cut, which she obviously sustained during that, which was a little bit worrying, but then some great work from the vets on course, and then from Neil Mulholland's vet, who she visited on the way home, meant that all was okay. She's back working away at home, and she'll hopefully have one more run for us before she heads home for breeding.
That's great to hear that she's okay, really important. That's good. And what about Strider? How's he doing?
Yeah, he had a race as well. So I actually, jet setting, I actually did two meetings in one day. He ran at Wolverhampton on the same evening that Dynamic Kate ran at Stratford. So we were there in the afternoon and then travelled on to Wolverhampton. Unfortunately, it was his debut for us. He was only sixth. We were hoping he would be a bit better than that, but having shown no signs of any issues on the gallops at home, he was making a noise during the race with his breathing and was clearly struggling as a result of that. So we were told by the jockey that he would be a nice horse once we got that sorted out. So that's encouraging to hear. And he's had a small operation since, which all went well. So he should be back racing at the end of November or early December. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do with that fixed, as he didn't run that badly even with the issue.
Well, I have to say, first of all, great planning by the racing manager there. 2 race meetings, both in the Midlands. That's pretty good going, Mr. B. And as for breathing operations, yeah, they can make a huge amount of difference. Sharp Distinctions recently had one after he made a noise at Yarmouth, and we really think it could be the making of him. We'll find out soon. And what about Bella Cavalla?
Yeah, all's going well with her. She's working well. We're really looking forward to her racing debut, which will probably be in December. But yeah, unfortunately, not so good news for us with Sajwan, our recently retired flat racer. I mentioned last month that he was going off to be retrained for a life outside of racing, and yeah, it was pretty horrific to learn that he suffered a kick from another horse when he was just out in the field playing, and fractured his leg, which was pretty bad. It was a bad fracture, and despite the best efforts, the vets just couldn't get a balance between giving him enough painkillers to keep him comfortable and sort of making sure that he would stay still enough to let the leg heal. So, yeah, after several days where he was clearly in pain and just making the injury worse, the vets advised us that he wasn't going to recover. And, yeah, very sadly, we had to say goodbye to him, which was very upsetting for everybody that was involved with him. But, simply nothing that could be done.
I'm really sorry to hear that, Phil. And I know not only was that, or would that have been very upsetting for you, but as racing manager, you then have the very unenviable and difficult task of telling your share owners the bad news or the sad news.
Yeah, indeed. And I have to admit, losing him did make me even more frustrated that we do have to spend some time justifying racehorse welfare to people outside of our sport. Thankfully, we've only lost 2 BG racing horses over the years, and neither of those has been as a result of racing. Both came when they were just being horses after their racing career. And it does sometimes seem to me that the only injuries that some people want to make a fuss about are the ones on the race courses. But yeah, I know we all care about the ones that happen away from racing as well.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, I was only saying the other day to friends that more horses get injured in the paddocks than they do racing or in their stables.
Yeah, I think that's true. Anyway, what about you? Any Solario runners in October and anything upcoming?
Well, again, the weather has played havoc with the racing programme, as it seems to have done throughout the summer. We had the ideal race lined up for Sharp Distinction, a 1 mile, 6 furlong handicap at Southwell this coming Thursday. But thanks to Storm Babette, and thank you, Storm Babette, Southwell Racecourse took an absolute hammering. I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures, Phil. It was completely underwater. I can't see them racing there for a while yet, never mind this Thursday. However, to be fair to the BHA, the British Horse Racing Authority, the racing authorities have put on a substitute all-weather race at Lingfield on the same day, so he goes there. I've already seen that he's been declared this morning, so that's great. Not the ideal track for him, but hopefully he should still run okay. As for 2-year-old Baron Barolo, I went to see him at Martley Hall Stud in Suffolk, which is about an hour from Newmarket, where he's chilling out after we lost the battle to get him out on the track as a 2-year-old. But he looks fantastic. He's coming along really well, and I'm looking forward to him making up for lost time as a 3-year-old.
Plenty to look forward to there. And of course, Sharp Distinction will have run by the time this podcast is released. So listeners, get yourself onto the Racing Post website and see whether Simon's going to be a happy bunny next month. Now, away from our runners into the wider world of horse racing, of course, last month saw Frankie Dettori unretire. I'm not sure whether that's a word or not, but he announced he's moving to the US to ride there for an indefinite period. Obviously, we've had his farewell tour all this year, and he's decided that maybe it isn't farewell after all, but it certainly didn't change the reception he was given at Ascot on Champions Day when he bowed out in the UK this year with 2 winners and the packed grandstands chanting his name. I don't think I've ever heard that for a jockey before. Certainly not at Ascot, where it's usually a top hat and tails type crowd. It was great to see. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on Frankie's change of heart and what caught your eye on Champions Day?
Well, I have to say the atmosphere was unbelievable, wasn't it? I mean, I was watching it at home, watching ITV's coverage, which as ever was superb. Look, as for Frankie changing his mind, people can change their minds, can't they, in life? And it seems as though Frankie has a big opportunity in the States. He's riding as well as ever. He's obviously finding it a little bit difficult to pack up completely. As for Champions Day, look, there was only one race winner came from off the pace, and it was that man, Frankie, on King of Steel, coming from last to first. Yes, of course, you need the horse under you, to make that happen. But it was an incredible ride. Bruff Scott, no less, said on TV, in 35 years of Frankie riding, he felt it was one of the best rides he'd ever seen him give a horse. One couldn't have scripted his exit from British racing any better, with 2 big winners on his last day because he won the first on Trawler Man. However, I have a feeling in my water he'll be back at Royal Ascot next year, maybe riding 1 or 2 horses for Wesley Ward, the American trainer. As for other notable winners, the well-backed Big Rock was an impressive all-the-way 6th-length winner of the QE2. And give a mention to Art Power's gutsy 40-1 win of the Champions Sprint. They were certainly 2 highlights for me. Look, Champions Day is always fantastic, isn't it, Phil? All the races were fabulous, but King of Steel capturing the headlines and the spirit of the afternoon, I think for me, that was the race of the day.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed watching the coverage. And of course, the other big October race was the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. And I think you were there, weren't you? How was that?
Yes, I had 10 people to look after for the Arc weekend, including some Solario Racing owners. And I'm delighted to say we all had a fabulous time at the Arc on the Sunday. And how impressive was Ace Impact, the still unbeaten Ace Impact. Everybody enjoyed the restaurants I'd chosen. And come on, what's not to like about Chic Paris, especially when the weather was freakishly hot? Who'd have thought I'd be wearing a linen suit at Longchamp on Arc Day in October in 27 degrees heat? I think it actually reached 28 degrees on our final day on Monday. Anyway, I went out with 10 people on Eurostar, and I arrived back at St Pancras International with 10 people. Mission accomplished.
And in answer to your question, I'd have thought you'd be wearing a linen suit at Longchamp on Art Day because you're that kind of suave, sophisticated gent that would wear a linen suit everywhere. I mean, it's kind of... now, we talked about getting together in October at the Golf Day, but I think our next get-together is going to be the 2-day syndicate showcase meeting at Ascot on the 24th and 25th of November. So I'm really looking forward to that. Are you?
Indeed, indeed. Yes, these great British racing days that promote shared ownership, they're fantastic and they soon come around. I enjoyed the 2 days at Ascot last year and I'm looking forward to this year's doubleheader. I plan to parade both yearlings as well as having a trade stand. It's a great way to find out about syndication. So come on, listeners, come along, meet Phil, meet myself, meet other syndicators there for 2 days great racing and the opportunity to find out how you can get involved.
Well, hopefully that'll have attracted several people to come and say hello to us at Ascot. But if anybody needs more persuasion, as usual, I will have free sweets for everybody that stops by and says hello to me.
Okay, a question here. If people take a share in a BG racing horse on the back of being lured into Phil's trade stand to sample the sweets, do they get discounted free dental treatment as well, I ask myself? No need to answer, Mr. B. It's rhetorical. And in any case, there's no time as we have our special guest, jockey Jack Quinlan, on the line. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Simon. How are you?
Very well, very well. First of all, congratulations on your Grade 2 win at Cheltenham for Alan King on Friday. Well done. Must be cock a hoop.
Yeah, no, obviously, absolutely delighted with that. Obviously, formerly a good horse in bumpers that didn't really perform last year. So just brilliant to have him back in top form.
Excellent. Now, Jack, we normally start these interviews at the beginning, how you got into racing. But I think in the light of 12-year-old Mercian Prince's recent retirement, let's talk about the present. You and he struck up a great relationship, having won 13 races together over 7 years. Now, I was at Kempton for his last race. It was an emotional day for the team. How did you feel on the day? And tell us what he's meant to you in your career.
He's a fabulous horse. There really are few words to do him justice. And if I got rambling, I could talk about him all day. The biggest thing that I kind of thank Mercian Prince for is he was my first winner that I rode for Amy, and my first winner that I rode for obviously Paul Murphy, Amy's father. So I always think of him as being at the very start of that relationship, if you like. The relationship that yielded the likes of Quinlan winning listed chases, and then of course Kalashnikov with all that he achieved, including a Grade 1 chase. So I don't mean to be rude about, but not in a bad way. There were better horses than Mercian Prince came along after that. I always think of him as a start, and if it wasn't for him, who knows? Would I have been on board those horses? So obviously, I'm incredibly grateful to him for that. But for a horse to have the longevity that Mercian Prince had, and it wasn't always straightforward. In the years in the middle, he had problems with his wind that we had to tinker with and get his confidence back. And you see, back end of last season and the start of this season, his 2 back-to-back wins at Kempton. Obviously both from the front, which was his preferred way of running. Brave and bold. To come back from where he came from and to still have that enthusiasm. There's not many horses I think would have a heart as big as him.
A question for you, Jack, about Mercian Prince. Do you want to have a guess as to how many rides you had on him?
I'm trying to think now. I'd say he won 30. He won 13. I think he was second a further 10 times. It must be getting towards 50.
Yeah, spot on. I made it 51 times you rode him out of 63 in total. So pretty impressive. So I can see how he's meant so much to you. But of course, it's not really goodbye to him, is it? Because he's going to stay with you and you're going to have plenty of fun with him. I don't know, hunting, team chasing. Tell us what might be in store for the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been said for many years now, between Amy, Paul and myself, that he was always going to come to me in retirement. I'm incredibly lucky. My parents have a small yard on the outskirts of Newmarket, so he'll be under their day care while I'm at work, and but be there for me to have a lot of fun with. Which I understand that's an incredibly fortunate position for me to be in, to have a horse, and then to be able to count on them and rely on them to look after him. But I believe it or not, I think he's actually going to be collected this afternoon. So he's having his last morning at Amy Murphy's, and he's heading over to my parents. He's always being a summer campaigner, he's always had a winter holiday, so he'll have that winter holiday as normal. He'll be let down gently now the next weeks and month, and then he'll be turned out for the winter with some new friends to be brought back in the spring. And I always think that's good for a thoroughbred coming out of racing. It allows them to completely let down, relax, and almost forget about racing. And when you bring them back, it's like starting them again. But yeah, I've always done plenty of trail hunting, following a scent, and a lot of team chasing, which it's quite high octane, adrenaline fueled sport for horses, which suits these X-race horses really well because it's still it's still quite an exciting atmosphere for them, which is what they're born and bred to do. But I suppose it'll be up to him. It'll be what he enjoys, and we'll find his niche. We'll find what he thinks is it's best for him in retirement.
Well, it's a lovely story. Great racing career, great partnership the two of you struck up, and we wish you, many fun days out together. I know that Amy says that the two of you do suit each other. You're both very bold, so well done. Now let's go back to the beginning. How did you get into racing? What's the Jack Quinlan story?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I touched on there quickly about my parents having a yard in Newmarket. When I was first born, my parents had a small yard, and they trained point to pointers and did a lot of breaking and pre-training. And I couldn't tell you what year it was. It's before I can remember. So you're talking back in the early 1990s. My uncle made the move over from Ireland, where he'd already been training, and set up training in Newmarket with my father Noel. So although back then you only ever had one name on the license, which was my uncle Michael, I guess in these modern days it would have been one of these joint licenses. But they worked together for many years. They had some great years and great successes. They had Royal Ascot winners with Lang's Lash. They had a Cheltenham Festival winner with Silk Affair. All while I was growing up, which was obviously all very exciting. But it obviously left me in a very fortunate position that I grew up in a racing yard. I would think I was riding out from the age of about 9 before school and on weekends. And then obviously got into the pony racing, and really, from a very young age, there was only ever one way I was going to go. I was always going to be a jockey. The only question was, with my father being 6'4", how tall I ended up, whether I could be a flat jockey or whether I'd have to go over to the jumps. But yes, like I say, there's never really been a plan B for me. It's always been in racing and going to be a jockey.
Hi, Jack. A couple of questions from me, if I may. Simon and I both enjoy our food, and I think it's fair to say neither of us are the right build to be jockeys. But obviously, weight watching is a big part of the job for many of your colleagues. Is that something you struggle with? And you were telling us before we recorded that you like the meal that you sometimes get provided by Huntingdon Racecourse. What's your main meal of choice if you are able to enjoy it?
I'm incredibly lucky. I sit around just over 10 stone naturally every day, with minimum weight over jumps being 10 stone 2, and then plus our allowances. It means if I do what we call minimum weight of 10.2, I sometimes have a pound to lose, which generally means skipping your breakfast in the morning and having a little bit of a sweat riding out. So no, I know there's lads that aren't quite as fortunate, but I am one of the more fortunate ones. And you touched on there on a meal of choice. I'm a big foodie. I love my food. I couldn't say a favourite meal as such, but what I would say is I'm from a family. My parents live in Newmarket. I'm one of 4 children, and we're a very close family. And I find there's nothing better than when we get together as a family. We all head over to mum and dad's, whether it be on a Sunday for a roast or midweek. And I kind of think it's more the company than the food, isn't it? So whenever we're having a family meal all together, that'd always be top of my list.
Good stuff. Good answer. Yeah, and I guess all jockeys want to be champion jockey. Are there any other targets you've set yourself, either sort of the next year or two, or perhaps longer term?
I suppose when you start out, you want to win all the big races, the Gold Cups, the Grand Nationals, and of course you want to be champion jockey. And you kind of get a little bit older and you realise how difficult those kind of things are to achieve. And I suppose you shift your aspirations and your goals. And at the moment, I'd say I just feel incredibly lucky that I get to go. I get up every morning and I never feel like I'm going to work. I'm going to ride horses, which, as you know, I've got Mercian Prince in retirement as a hobby. I ride horses for fun. So I feel incredibly fortunate. So in a way, while I'm earning a good enough living to comfortably pay the bills while doing something I thoroughly enjoy, I'm actually quite happy with that. I will touch on one of my big things that's bugged me for a good few years now is I hadn't managed to get a winner at Cheltenham. There are a few more tracks on my list that I haven't ridden winners at, But if I'd got to the end of my career without getting a winner at Cheltenham, I think that would have annoyed me for the rest of my life. So that was one aspiration to get out of the way, which I ticked off just the other day. So, but no, I suppose now the next one is to get one at Cheltenham in March.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Simon and I are huge believers in supporting all the guests that we have on Inside the Rails, and normally we do that in different ways, but actually I did that physically on Friday. I gave you a good cheer up the run-in because I knew you were joining us on Monday. So, I was there at Cheltenham myself. So, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's all right. Just coming on to some of your sort of big rides that you've had in the past. You've mentioned them, Mercian Prince, and of course you won a Grade 1 on Kalashnikov. Are there any new kids on the block for you? Are there any horses you've ridden in the last sort of 12 months that you're really looking forward to getting back on board this season?
Yeah, there's a Ben Brookhouse set up training in Newmarket back end of last year, and he's already hit the ground running with several winners, and along with his father, Mr. Brookhouse, who's bred and bought very good national hunt horses, proper graded animals over the years. They seem to be putting together quite a nice team. Most recently, a very impressive bump winner called Bretchen Castle up at Sedgefield, who could be anything, and actually a horse that managed to finish third at Cheltenham in a bumper on Saturday called Martin Plague. We always thought, we're running him in a bumper, we always thought he'd be better over obstacles, over further. So they're two very exciting horses only at the very starts of their career. And I'd also have to give a mention to a horse of Neil King's called One More for the Road, who was admirably consistent over the last 2 seasons. Notably picking up a listed novice hurdle at Newbury, not last season, the season before. And he is likely to embark on a novice chasing campaign this year. And I think he could be very exciting over a fence. I think he could be better than he was over hurdles. And of course, with that consistency, means he should turn up at several of the big meetings and hopefully put his best foot forward.
Thanks for that, Jack. We'll follow those horses with great interest, as I'm sure our listeners will. Finally, a question we like to ask all of our guests. If you could change 3 things in British racing, and only 3 things, please, what would they be?
I suppose the first one is the obvious one, the one that everybody says, prize money. Now, I'm not going to profess to know I know the answer to it or how we're going to fix that. But you look at the rate, how prize money's gone up over the last 15, 20 years compared to inflation. You could actually argue that it's gone down. And my only kind of experience is I was very lucky to ride over in France a few times over the last couple of years. And the prize money difference between France and England is just astronomical. And like I say, I'm not going to pretend I know the answer, and I'm not going to say how they're going to fix it. But certainly the people that have the power to and the knowledge to, I think it is something that desperately needs addressing to try and make racing just more sustainable for owners and its participants.
Yeah, definitely agree with that one. And your second suggestion?
Now, I say this knowing that it is ongoing, that they are trying to do something about it. I think if you've seen the new fixtures that's been released, the jump jockeys are getting a 19-day break, I believe it is, up from 11 in August, which is great. And, as jump jockeys, I speak on the collective, we're incredibly grateful for. But what we find on the whole very frustrating in the summer is we get a 4 days with no jump racing. Then there's one meeting somewhere. Then you get another 3 days blank. Then you might get 2 days of racing, another day blank. And it's very hit and miss. And it makes it very hard if a jump jockey decided they wanted to go and ply their trade in America for a month or 6 weeks, or even head over to France and see how, to gain more experience. It's so difficult to say, right, I'm not going to ride for the next month. I think we saw it with Aidan Coleman a couple of seasons ago. Top class jockey, brilliant jockey, decided to take it easy and go travelling. Again, as a lot of people in other walks of life are able to do. And when he came back after travelling, he found it incredibly hard to get back going again. And I just think that's the nature of the game, unfortunately. You can't risk missing anything. But at the same time, you can't go away. So, I just feel like the fixture list could be better managed, that, we almost we don't mind racing every single day. If there was, say, a 2-month gap where they said, right, there's no racing. If you want to go on holiday, go on holiday. If you want to go travelling, or if you want to, even jockeys towards the end of their career could retrain and gain experience in other industries to set them up for the future. So I just think that the fixture list probably needs rejigging and looking at. But again, I know it is under consideration and being looked at, but I don't know how easy that kind of thing is to change for the powers that be.
Okay, well, that's interesting. A lot of people mention prize money. The fixture list is more of an unusual one, so thank you for that. And do you have suggestion number 3?
Yeah, suggestion number 3 actually isn't, well, I suppose it would benefit jockeys in the long term. It's more of an industry-wide thing. It's the future of horse racing. I think we've got to grow our support and our fan base, and I imagine the best way to do that is to encourage and gain enthusiasm and following from the younger generation that will then obviously carry it forward as the years go on. And I know there are some race courses taking on initiatives that they do student race days. I was at Uttoxeter recently, and I could barely get through the crowd to get to the weighing room when I first came in, and I couldn't understand what was going on a normal Thursday afternoon meeting. And it turned out it was a student race day with, I don't know if it was free tickets or reduced tickets, but I promise you that you couldn't move in the place. It was like being at one of the major festivals. And I just think there could be more of that, and whether, during the school holidays and weekends, whether they put on family race days that parents can bring their children along. And I know a lot of places do under 16s for free, but if you're bringing the children, do you get a reduced price ticket to get you in the gate? Once you're in, you're going to buy a burger, you're going to have a bet, you're going to buy a drink, so you're going to spend your money inside the race course. So should we, at midweek meetings, be letting people in either on reduced tickets or for free, just to get them through the gates? Because a lot of these meetings you ride at midweek, there's just nobody there.
That's great. 3 really good suggestions, Jack. Thanks very much. We really appreciate you giving up your time. I know you're dying to go into Huntingdon and see what the chefs prepared for you and the other jockeys. Just leaves me to wish you good luck this afternoon at Huntingdon and good luck for the rest of the season. Thanks, Jack.
That's great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, I thought Jack would be a good guest, Phil, and he didn't disappoint, did he? A lovely guy and a very intelligent jockey. I particularly liked his suggestion number 2 about the fixture list. No, it was great to have him on.
It certainly was, yeah, another excellent guest for us, and hopefully more to come in the future. So, yeah, before I sign off, I'd like to ask all our listeners if they could give us a bit of a boost in terms of the podcast circulation. So anything you can do in terms of likes and shares on social media and following us on your podcast platform of choice, and of course telling anybody else that you think might be interested in listening to us, that would all be much appreciated.
Well, that just leaves me to thank co-host Phil Boyle from BG Racing, producer Callum Ronan from Callum Ronan Creative, professional jumps jockey Jack Quinlan, and of course you, the listeners. From wearing linen at Longchamp to check shirts at Cheltenham, as racing moves from flat to jumps, it's the Italian maestro who hogs the headlines. And we still all ask, has Lanfranco Dettori really left our shores forever? This is Simon Double from Solario Racing saying, thank you for listening to Inside the Rails, and until next time, goodbye.